We're here today on Country Pocket with Jack Barksdale. He's the youngest guest I've ever had on the show at only 17, but his album is wise beyond his years. It's called Voices. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. We got a lot of stuff to unpack here. The first track you just heard is called The Cost. Um, What has you looking at human existence and thinking so nihilistically?
Well, uh, I don't know. I just think that song kind of came out of there's kind of like a pie in the sky idea that someday uh we would advance enough to where we could move humans away from Earth uh and because eventually the even before the sun expands and envelops or nearly envelops the Earth. Uh, you know, the atmosphere will start to thin, and um, you know, there'll be a lot of radiation, and oceans will dry up, and all this crazy stuff. Um, and we probably won't be able to get away, but uh, and then kind of end the chorus. I say, if we could actually move somewhere else, would it even be worth it? Uh, kind of is the thought there. But that song just kind of addresses the narrative, I guess, that things are somewhat, fair if you work hard enough, if you do the right things, if you do all this kind of stuff, you will succeed or do well in life, which isn't really the case.
So, I mean, these things, the atmosphere drying up and everything, these things are a long way off. What's got them in your head now?
Well, I wrote this during the pandemic, and I was getting into a lot of different kind of science stuff, and learning about uh, astrophysics, particle physics. Not like learning in depth, but just kind of an overview of them. I'd like to learn more in depth about it, but learning about those things, and then it's really interesting going into that world that uh, there's just a lot of really interesting ideas about the world that are actually pretty, consequential to the rest of life if you think about it, and people don't often take those grand things into consideration, like the eventual heat death or big crunch of the universe, and or all this kind of crazy stuff that is really interesting. And so one of those things uh, is also the end uh, of Earth as
You,
a habitable place for humans.
you ask, is it even worth the cost? Uh, are you wondering if humanity is worth saving?
Um, Not necessarily in that line, but in the chorus definitely. And it's I guess it's less of wondering if it's worth saving or not, more just using that as a point to as a way to point out that you know, humanity is kind of messed up, you know.
Yeah, you talk about the straight and narrow path just maybe not being the one you believe in anymore. Um, you're taking an interesting path, and I was studying all this science, going into depth with all this art. Do you feel like you could ever follow the normal path of a life?
um, in what way?
Do you feel like, you're destined for something artistic and unusual, or I guess I'm trying to figure out like where it comes from, the rejection of the straight and narrow path, the the way sort of that there's something else for you.
Well, I'm more kind of saying that I don't think there's anything wrong with the straight and narrow path. I think it's probably a good thing. Uh, it just doesn't always get you where, uh, it quote unquote is supposed to get you. It you know, doing everything right doesn't always yield the right results. Um, but as far as things being relatively living a relatively normal life or anything like that. I have no idea necessarily what my future holds, so I guess we'll see.
Next one I want to talk about is end of days. Uh, Again, very much existential, very much, I don't know, not necessarily the thoughts I was having at 17. Um, what has you thinking about the end of the world, the end of life, all these topics?
Well, I don't know. I think during the pandemic, I just realized that I didn't know a lot of things, for myself. I just uh, knew the things that other people had told me, but hadn't actually, looked into a bunch of stuff, and so uh, the internet is a thing now, and it's made it much easier for that kind of stuff to be able to look into a philosophy, science, all that kind of stuff, and relatively accessibly. Uh, so yeah, I started trying to do that, and even through uh, just little YouTube videos from you know different people online, and yeah, just trying to piece things together, uh, and find out my surroundings, I guess, in a existential sense. And so yeah, that's I've been kind of doing that a little bit over the last several years, and so uh, yeah, I think it's really interesting stuff. Philosophy, science, which I think is really a lot more of a lot more akin to philosophy than people think, and or I guess integral to philosophy than people think. And So yeah, I think that's really interesting stuff. And End of Days, it's just kind of an overview of a lot of things that I kind of see as I look around, but addressed to more of like a common listener, like saying the first line, which is you and me, my fellow man, living in space and time that we don't understand, which uh, is partially true on a humanity level, but especially true on just a normal individual, that doesn't understand, like I don't understand general and special relativity, and all that kind of crazy stuff. And so I don't necessarily understand uh, space and time, but I'm living in it. So it's kind of strange that as individuals, we're all, well, not all of us, but I guess all of us were just kind of looking around trying to make sense of things that we can never fully grasp just because of how much complex stuff there is to grasp.
Yeah, I want to break down one of the things you said earlier that you know you want to understand these things for yourself. You don't want to just go with what other people told you. Um, that is quite a way to look at the world. Uh, so in class, you're more interested in going into deep learning than maybe listening to a lecture.
Well, I think listening to a lectures is great. It's more just seeing if that person giving the lectures is qualified or an expert in what they're talking about, and uh, and then also you know looking up other uh, sources and other people that have maybe supporting views or differing views from that person. So uh, yeah, just information is a powerful thing. It's kind of what everything runs on. Uh, what the brain runs on for most part, and so just trying to get as much information as you can, and information about how credible that information is, and all that kind of stuff, uh, and context and complexity. All that's very uh, important, I think, uh, to get as much of that stuff as you can.
I feel like there are literal news organizations and governments that don't adhere to those principles as strongly as you do. And that is a tragedy, and that is also probably why we are looking at some of the issues you're talking about in these songs.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that comes down to, um, you know, all these, kind of larger than life uh, entities that are made up of lots of people, like a government or a company. Uh, they're all just it's run by individual people that, once again, like I kind of stated at the beginning, uh, can't really understand everything. And so, uh, even, uh, yeah, so I think it's kind of it's an interesting thing. Another song on the album is Only Human, which kind of talks about the the grand and the puny nature of humanity, because when you look at an individual person, it really doesn't seem like uh, the average person necessarily knows what they're doing. and then when you go out on a larger scale, it sometimes that bleeds through, but and sometimes it works itself out.
Well, we're gonna listen to End of Days and we'll be right back.